Hey everyone. Well, welcome back to Help Talk. We're not live this week because, well, we had a few little issues with the software platform that we're using, but there you go. No worries because everybody understands we've got to be resilient and adaptive in this day and age because things happen, right? So, very excited as always, have our wonderful co-founder of HELPipedia here. We've got Phil Vetrano, who also works planning and vision, helping kiddos get and their parents get ready for college and then what's beyond high school. And we're really pleased to have our guest here today. And hopefully, like you guys are seeing the arrows and the stuff the way I am, like so Paul Vecchione is stacked here in the third line of the cubes that we've got. And he is the founder of Long Island Prep, which has a wonderful and comprehensive program on substance abuse prevention and intervention. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
It's so great to be here with you guys. Thank you so much. A little technology blip, but it happens. So here we are having our conversation. Great to see you guys. Thank you.
Well, you've been in the space. I think that we should give folks a little more context. You've been a teacher and in special needs and teaching children with all kinds of difficulties and issues for a long time. So you've seen firsthand some of the effects and that whole, I guess, confounding problem that happens when a lot of youth have mental health challenges. And so they start to use to avoid some of the mental health issues. And then, of course, that exacerbates, they go into this terrible cycle. And then many get impacted by juvenile justice. So, talk to us a little bit about what you've seen and what's going on out there post COVID now with respect to substance abuse and the need for even more prevention and intervention modalities.
Absolutely. So I think, this whole thing began, well, first of all, I started teaching about 20 years ago. By the time I and the rest of the country figured out that there were some real issues out there with kids, we were in a full-blown, crisis with the opioid epidemic, and the mental health crisis, right? That is ravaging communities across the United States still to this day. COVID exacerbated the issue with homeschooling and the social isolation and, and the anxiety of the pandemic. We're on a different footing now. COVID is behind us, thankfully, not, getting sick and stuff like that, but in terms of the large scale societal, like the lockdowns and stuff have passed. So we are seeing residual effects of that. It's funny because data comes out every year and it's like this. So we have to kind of, put it in context. What I can tell you is from what I see personally is we're still, neck deep in issues that pertain to mental health and substance abuse when it comes to our youth. I think that we have a lot of work to do still, and that's why I'm in this space, and Phil and yourself are in this space because, our kids and our families and our parents really still do need a lot of help and a lot of support.
And what I've seen too, and just reading trends, as you guys know, I'm a data wonk. So I love, like that whole science nerd. I geek out on, statistics and right trends and what's going on. Some of the trends with respect to youth and substance abuse are encouraging. For example, the consumption of cigarettes has gone down, the consumption of e-cigarettes has gone down. Of course, then you get into well, now they're vaping with THC and they're eating gummies like they are candy. And those statistics aren't being recorded effectively by the powers that be, even CDC. It's really hard to get a read on it. What we do know is that even 1 year ago, there were only about 24 gummy providers with THC, or simply cannabis, CBD provider gummies. Now there are over 400 that are legal in the United States. And get this, there's about a dozen of them that are geared specifically and marketed to specifically teenagers. Ease your anxiety, ease your social stress. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and you know what? You can't blame these companies, right? Because I mean, you can blame them, but I mean, in terms of, look, we live in America where we're in a capitalist society, the almighty dollar. So you can go back to the, mid 1990s with Joe Cool with the Camel cigarettes to,
Yes.
all the way up to, flavoring vapes with bubble gum and cinnamon toast crunch. And now they figured out that they can make money by, getting kids to buy their gummies that taste like, like we said, gummy bears, cookies, Rice Krispie treats. I mean, so until we catch up with them and we put regulation in place to prevent this, this is going to keep happening. We are seeing some improvement in vaping, but I think as long as the product is out there and there is a consumer to buy them, we're always going to be playing, cat and mouse with these companies. So that further, I think, makes it obvious that we need to be ahead of it with prevention.
And one other stat that I'll throw out there is we're setting up the context here to get into the 7 signs that your teen is using drugs. In New Jersey, in this past year, 2024, they had 9 hospitalizations in actually specifically Bergen County schools for kids who were under the effects and negative effects and influence. I just dog now because it's that kind of day. There we go. We had the barking, but she's moved on, headed outside. But 9 kids were hospitalized because they had consumed too many gummies and they had to be taken out of school and just stomachs pumped, the whole thing, because they were, high on this stuff. It's outrageous.
It's outrageous, but it doesn't surprise me. Unfortunately, I think with the availability of these drugs and the ease with which they can get them and consume them, I mean, same thing. Kids don't have that ability to reason through consequence, right? They don't have the brain power to reason through what could possibly go wrong with what they're doing. So what do? They push it to the extreme, the same way it was done with alcohol, and obviously other drugs as we approach this crisis, which keeps changing every single day, every single week, every single year. So again, it just puts more emphasis on what us three and others are doing, which is to support kids and parents, educate them, and really put them on a solid footing to be ahead of this. I have three young boys, 10, 9, and 2, and I'm telling you, with at least with the 10 and 9-year-old, I'm already starting the conversations with what they need to be, aware of and what they need to steer clear of. And really, it starts at home, and we need to reinforce it outside of the home in our communities and in our schools.
That's fantastic. This is what we need, right? We need parents that are on it. Because one last thing, then I'm going to turn this over to you, is through a number of social workers and folks that I know that are in the space of substance abuse prevention and intervention, when they ask the kiddo, right, and I should say kiddo, I guess the teen, right, 12-ish, I know it's a tweener, but 12 to 17 to 18 in the area that they're supporting. They say, well, where did you get these CBD or THC gummies? I took them from mom, right? Took them from her purse. So mom may not even be aware that their child is taking, from her or his stash, right? Could be, anybody, any parent out there. So parents have to be a lot more vigilant with respect to if they're using, that's fine, but just make it so that it's not accessible, like guns, right, to
Yeah.
their children, right? Lock them up.
Absolutely. And again, that goes back to when the cigarettes were available, when the alcohol is available, when the marijuana is available. One of the staples in our program for Long Island Prep is access and exposure. So when they see mom doing it, the older brother doing it, the cousin doing it, and they're exposed to it, there is a markedly higher chance that a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid is going to dabble because to them, it's somebody older who I respect doing it. Why can't I do it? So, and again, kids don't have the ability to reason through that.
And that's just it. So let's get into this because there are a lot of effects. Not only you highlighted that the teens don't really think through the consequences, both in the immediate short term of what could happen. For example, if you're driving and you get behind the wheel, and the wheel doesn't even necessarily mean a car. There's a lot of these scooters. I see these kids going, it's 25, 30 miles an hour, no helmet, right? You get on one of those impaired, whoo, right? You're in
Right.
trouble, even a bicycle, right? But there's also the long-term physiological consequences that they don't understand. We've all seen the effects of high usages of heroin or of crack. You start to see the dental decay. You start to see the deterioration in the flesh and lots of open wounds. Like there's so much stuff and they don't think it affects them. So let's help parents identify what those signs are early before their kids end up really going down a wrong path. So Paul, what's the first sign that a parent can look for and go, I think my kiddo might be using?
Yeah, so let's first keep in mind that, the age group of kids we're talking about, 12 to 18, 19 years old, it's a very tumultuous time in their lives. They're not children per se anymore. they're not yet adults. So there's that gray area where they're trying to find themselves and take risks and do things like that, which to an extent is healthy. But so there are always going to be a lot of changes in your child between those years, whether it's physiological, physical, psychological. But there are certain signs you want to make sure you have an eye on because they could be signs that your child is using. So the first one I would say, if he or she has lost interest in, hobbies or activities that they used to enjoy, whether it's sports, whether it's music, art, baking, things that they would normally love and they've always loved to do. If you start to notice that they aren't as interested in those things as much, you might want to just keep an eye on it and have a conversation because sometimes what happens is, the drugs or the drinking or the vaping, it's filling that time now with what they used to do and really enjoy. So you want to just have an eye out for that because that could definitely be a sign that, maybe some malfeasance are taking place.
Understood. And can you help us and help the parents maybe tease out a little bit between some of that loss of interest versus, hey, I'm no longer part of the cool kids or whatever. I got booted out of the WhatsApp chat and I'm just not in anymore. And they're reacting to that. How would a parent tease that out?
So I think the biggest thing a parent needs to do is communicate with their child. That is so important. I think that, listen, again, that's those teenage years are going to be they're going to be tumultuous with you and your teenager, but you can also find a common ground where you can have a conversation with your teenager about what's going on in their lives. So if you notice one of these changes, these subtle changes that, they're no longer interested in things they used to be interested in, or there's signs of, some kind of social, I mean, being an outcast, or there's issues with friends, because again, those things are going to happen normally. Now, when we dig deep and we have a real conversation, you can really start to listen for some signs that, maybe this goes beyond the normal teenage purview.
All right, that's helpful. Again, I understand you got to communicate. What about tip number two? What's another sign that your teen might be
Yeah.
using?
Friends. So the sudden and not so obvious too, also that the times when they change their circle of friends. If they're all of a sudden hanging out with people you haven't heard of before, you don't know very well, maybe you don't trust or have any kind of comfort level with them hanging out with them, you might want to start a conversation about that friend. Where are they from? Who are they with? What are they doing? What do they do for fun? What are you guys doing for fun? Because as kids progress through middle and high school, they're going to change friends, but it's normally within the things that they enjoy, whether it's a sports team or it's somebody who they're in drama with or music with. They're going to change friends, but if they do so, that's outside of their normal circle of friends and interests. It might be an indication that they're hanging around with people that maybe you don't want them to. And again, it starts with communication and it starts with parents really doing their due diligence with making sure their children are talking to them and telling them the truth about things. You need to follow up and reinforce.
All right, continuing on here then. So that's two really helpful tips. But again, you keep coming back to the theme, communicate, right? I know we've for all of us that have had teenagers, like I said, I call them teenage mutant ninja, buttholes. Very, very challenging time to manage children who they want to go lock themselves in their room and like go away, right? All of this sort of nonsense. And you got to dig in and be there. How about another tip, Paul? Number three. What's another
Yeah,
sign?
but which, just going back to before that, keep an eye on the people they're hanging out with, their friends, peer pressure. Those are things that are major indicators of changing behaviors that could indicate, some things going on. The third tip I would say is keep an eye on their appearance. Like, you kind of alluded to it before. Maybe they have, a drawn out face. Maybe they look tired. Maybe they look disinterested, disheveled. Maybe their hygiene is not as good as it used to be because drugs, excuse me, drug use takes away from the normal routine of being a healthy individual. They take over, that desire to be buttoned up, or, take care of yourself physically and, hygienically. So if you notice that your teen is all of a sudden dressing differently, or maybe piercings or tattoos, not to stigmatize that because I have both, but maybe just something that is not really like them or who they were. But again, keeping in mind that they're going to go through these changes normally. So what do we have to do? We've got to make sure we're aware of it and we are communicating with them. So it really does go back to keeping tabs on your kids and what they're doing, and that's the best way to do that is through talking to them.
Yeah, so one thing that you mentioned is the hanging out and the friends, and certainly this is a world of social media where they can have, connections around the world. And certainly the physical activity that they would be doing is not impactful there. Thank goodness that they can't, but they could, I don't know if they could distribute and receive. I know mom and dad, please be mindful of when they're receiving mail. That could be one of those things that are being delivered that you don't want. And unfortunately, like you knew the kid was smoking cigarettes, you knew the kid was smoking marijuana. It would get on their clothes, and this was good, substance to see and figure out. Now, who's gonna figure out that the person just had a gummy? Now you got to get in the conversations, the communications, and how open and honest they are in the relationships that we have with your kids, and certainly the behavior changes. That's something that as parents you see, as long as they're not locked in their room for 8 hours and you don't see them, you won't notice the behavior changes. And as as a parent myself, it's just natural that the teenager, after 16 years, 15 years of having conversations with you, they'd rather choose to go close that door.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
good stuff, Paul.
that actually taps into number four, which is their social media habits. Listen, social media is here. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. We all use it. We all benefit from it when the intent is good. But it's the Wild West, and when we subject our kids to an unregulated medium that really can have anything they want at their fingertips, whether it's pornography, drugs, you name it. They can get their hands on it. They can talk to people who distribute it. They can talk to people who have it. They can meet up with people. They can, watch it. I mean, it's still, this unknown landscape that, kids are exposed to. And unfortunately, a lot of parents don't regulate or talk to their kids about, because like you said, that there's a normal period there where there's going to be less talking to your parents and more talking to your friends, but there's got to be some line when they're using social media, whether it's tracking it or keeping tabs on it, talking about it, and then reinforcing it with, these are the consequences of not having something within your normal behavior. And it's easy for kids to find that, and it's easy for them to exploit it, and unfortunately that leads to behaviors that we want to try to prevent. So social media awareness is a huge one.
And we have into cell phone usage. One of our other members in HELPipedia, one of our community partners, Christine Bernat, who also runs our Monday weekly well-being chapter at 2 p.m. She's got a wonderful cell phone agreement and contract, and that's available through HELPipedia and the Hub for Help. But let's come back to this in social media. I always did. I'm like, give me your phone, social audit now.
Mm-hmm.
Unlock it, whatever else, and like we're going through it. Who's this? Who's this on Instagram? Who's this on Snapchat? Who's that? Like who? You got to be in. You've got to be the parent. You're not. Yes, you're going to honk your kid off by saying, "Give me your phone," but you're going to really honk your kid off if you say, "Like, I don't like what I'm seeing here. I'm taking your phone for a week," right? And
Absolutely.
Then what they'll do in retaliation for that, right? So.
Yeah, and think about it. When we were younger, I love that, when I was a kid, but it's so true. The information and the scope of information that was available to us versus what's available to them today is night and day. You can't even begin to compare it. Anything they want is at their fingertips. and really difficult to track and keep tabs on. So that's we always tell parents to not be complacent when it comes to cell phone use and to social media.
Exactly. It is so different. I think back and I laugh. We had to go to the library. A couple of rich kids had the Encyclopedia Britannica set in their houses. Like,
I
and I
believe
remember
it.
some of the guys, like one guy's like, yeah, I got this magazine from my
Right,
dad. And it was like a big deal that he snuck it out of the house. And we can imagine what magazine that was.
right,
It
right,
was such a big deal that he was like the it guy at school because,
right,
you
right.
can get that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, sign number five.
Yes, sign number five, coming from an educator, would be truancy, academic decline. You know, every kid's going to struggle in something in school, but consistently, kids are going to be who they are academically from, let's say sixth to 12th grade on a general line. Things are going to happen in and out, but when there's a real steep drop in their interest in school, in their grades, in going to school and being late to school. If once it's kind of out of their norm, I think that's some troubling signs because again, drugs or alcohol or something is taking the place of their interest in being a good student or their interest in things that they can accomplish at school. But if that happens quickly and it happens to a point where it's problematic, that's something you want to pay attention to right away.
And I guess when looking at the school and then the decline, I think a lot of it comes down to, attitude as well, right? Your child will come to you and say, okay, I've got some problems. I've got this. Math is hard. I hate math. It sucks. You know, whatever. I've heard a lot of that over the years from different kiddos and my friends' kiddos. And okay, you get it. But to your point, I mean, if you're getting an F in art class or music class and F's everywhere else, something's going on, right?
Yeah, because that's going to happen through the normal course of a child's progression through school. There are going to be subjects that they are no longer very good at because it becomes very difficult. But it's when there's a real obvious drop in grades or truancy is present that you really need to pay attention. What's going on here? There's something, and it might not be drugs. It might not be alcohol. It might be they're being bullied. It might be that they have just completely lost interest in something that they once loved. But again, that you tease that out to use your language there by having a conversation, but really being a cognizant and involved parent. You need to be involved in their lives at every step of the way as much as you can.
Excellent, Paul. And one thing I wanted to mention for the parents who are listening, as we know in this great deal of technology, you have access to your kids' grades, and so this is certainly a reactive measure that you could take. But a proactive measure you could take is you have the relationship with the teachers that they have, and if there's any signs of altering behavior. There's a line of communication between the teacher and the parent, and if you have to set the tone. The teacher has maybe 200 students in 9 periods or 8 periods that they're working at, and if you don't have that relationship with the teacher, you can absolutely develop and say, "Listen, I good or bad, can you please let me know if my son or daughter is facing any challenges that you see, and I'm not going to blame you at all if you raise a flag and it's not there. It's okay."
Right.
And get the support from the teacher because you care you love your kid. But if you're not thinking about this and you don't know this is an option for you, this is definitely a great strategy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The line of communication, there it is again, but between the parent, the student, and the school or people in the community, the coach, whomever's involved in that child's life, sees something every day. Good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And if there's a sudden change, you need to at least pay attention to it and investigate it.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Sign number six.
Number six. So lying, cheating, stealing. You
Oh
say what?
my.
Yeah. Oh my. Again,
Down that yellow brick road.
yeah.
For
But
sure.
your typical teenager is gonna lie a little bit. Your typical teenager's going to be a little deceptive with their behavior sometime.
Mm.
That's normal. When it becomes problematic and obvious that they are hiding something, that they are not being truthful with who they're with, where they were, why they didn't do their homework. Believe it or not, I mean, the more you dig into it, the more obvious it becomes, the more of a red flag it becomes. So if they're suddenly being untruthful, or if there are things that start missing around the house, believe it or not, they'll grab something from your armoire, they'll grab your watch and pawn it. I mean, in extreme cases, they'll steal money. It's, I think that they don't have those guardrails to, stop them from doing things. At that point in time, one thing that's the most important to them when they're addicted to drugs is getting another dose of drugs. So they'll do anything, they'll say anything, they'll lie, cheat, and steal. Oh my, but that's the case. So if they're all of a sudden stepping out of their normal behaviors and being deceptive, that's something you want to definitely keep an eye on.
And it's interesting. I've seen, like I said, some of my friends that are counselors, kids like, even if they're in an affluent family, yeah, I lost my cell phone. Oh yeah, I lost my school laptop. Yeah, I lost. They're pawning it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we even extend it to things like gambling, there's a huge following now of teenagers with gambling, whether it's the sports apps, I don't have to name them, but we know what they are, the fantasy leagues, poker is a huge thing. I'm not sure if it's popular where you are, Laura Lynn, but it is as popular as I've ever seen it. Kids talk about it every single day. What they play, how much they played. So once gambling, you throw gambling into this as well, you're talking about a major life altering habit that could really get them in a lot of trouble before their lives even begin. So if things are disappearing, maybe they're not doing drugs, but maybe they're doing some gambling that they shouldn't be doing. So that's another thing that you need to have a real close eye on.
It sounds so scary to be a parent at this
Yeah.
age, right?
Yeah, but you know what? You could basically bring it back to the things we were talking about. It's so easy for them to download an app and, gamble. Back in the day, maybe we played some dice at someone's house, so we had a game of cards or something once in a while. But now the availability and the technology to do it quickly, and I mean quickly. They can get money deposited and it could be gone in a matter of minutes, and then it's so easy to just reinforce it and do it again. So maybe they're not using drugs, but when things are missing, maybe they're gambling. So you want to keep an eye on that too.
Right, and the stakes are higher in that too. Like you said, we gamble. Yeah, we might have had a couple of bucks or whatever from some
Right.
babysitting money. Now parents are like, yeah, I need 100, I need 200. Like I see the kids around here, and it's
Yep.
So when your kid's asking about financial literacy, about your bank accounts,
Yes.
it's
You really have to pay attention to it because I've never seen this level of interest in this population of students that I've seen in the last several years. And it's funny because some kids you just know should not be gambling. Like gambling is supposed to be a hobby, it's supposed to be fun, but when you lose too much, you're supposed to stop. But kids don't have the, like I've been talking about it with drugs. They don't have the stop sign in their mind because they don't see the consequences because they can't reason through it yet. They're not old enough. Their brains aren't developed enough to know that, hey, if I blow $5,000-6,000 on a credit card, the serious consequences. At 17, that could set you up for failure in the future. And there's a whole bunch of research and a whole bunch of data that points to, kids who start gambling and they become problematic as teenagers are umpteen, more likely to become involved in drugs, in alcohol, in breaking the law and things like that. So absolutely need to pay real close attention to those hobbies, folks.
okay. Last sign, Paul. This has been terrific. And then we're gonna, walk back through them again so everybody can get the quick summary. All right, sign number 7.
Yeah, and this sounds crazy, but if your kid is breaking the law, or if your kid is breaking the rules, if your kid is involved in just risky behaviors that are outside of their normal their normal day, their normal purview, it's a sign. Don't ignore it. Maybe once you screw up, you make a mistake, but if it becomes habitual and if it becomes something that's occurring on a consistent basis, that's a red flag of red flags. And I mean, you say, well, what kind of laws can they break? Just name it. They're trying to get their hands on something that because they need the money. They need the money to pay for their habits. And again, that comes with drugs, that comes with gambling. So if they're doing things as severe as that, that's something that you really, it's not just, I made a mistake. Maybe once, twice, three times. Investigate that because there's a reason why they're all of a sudden doing the things that they don't normally do.
Well, the new trend related to that is retail gang theft, right? So they're going in with a couple of folks and they're going in and swarming the luxury goods, handbags or whatever else from some of the department stores, grabbing, grab as many as they can and heading out and then pawning them. But they're also, and this is what's terrible, is that people are preying on these young students and saying, because of your age, you're not going to have to, your record will be sealed, all the rest of that. You go be my person that goes and steals these. I'll give you a cut for each time. And don't worry if you get caught, don't worry about it because the record will be sealed. You'll be fine. And kids believe it. So they're following it. And we see it over here all over New Jersey.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that those behaviors are, I don't want to say it's normal for a teenager to steal something, but sometimes but it happens. They want something that they can't pay for. That's not, something that I condone, but it's not something that's completely out of, the realm of possibilities. But if it happens more and more, and if it becomes habitual or there's a trend, or you just don't trust what they're telling you. You just have to put your due diligence in and get to the bottom of it and nip it before it becomes problematic.
All right. So with that, Paul Vecchione, founder of Long Island Prep, with a wonderful and very, very deep and comprehensive solution that not only gets into substance abuse and prevention, but ties into the mental health and some of the wraparound things that come with that, and extends even into other habits that are problematic, gambling and that you've talked about. It's addiction. And whatever that addiction may be, it can lead to negative downstream consequences. So any final thoughts, Paul, before we wrap up?
So I think that parents have to realize that the kids are growing up in times that we don't understand, meaning we didn't experience what they're experiencing. I think young parents have a taste of it because they may have become parents during the 2000s, early 2000s, 2010s, where there was social media, there are cell phones. But in terms of, I'm 45 years old. I can't relate to some of the issues that some parents are faced with. So you have to give them some grace period to adjust to what they're experiencing. But that just means you have to be extra careful, extra vigilant, and extra, comprehensive in your approach to addressing some of the things they're going through. They're experiencing life a lot faster and a lot more inundated than we ever did. So keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that poses and that brings on a lot of challenges for you and for them. And you have to keep it. You have to stay informed, and you have to keep your children informed.
Yeah. Well said, Paul. The amount of peer pressure, and we've had peer pressure before, but now it's everywhere from outside of your neighborhood. And that's the hard part is that they have to build these walls. We have to build these walls around them because it's not just a few neighbors down the street that we have to worry about. It is anybody and everybody who's connected in the wild, wild west that Paul was sharing before, and extremely challenging for parents. And believe you me, our parents did not share with us the knowledge and insights about how to be great parents in this 21st century. And we really have to get out of there, and really be proactive and surround our kids with great people. And they should be surrounding themselves with great friends who have core values that are strong, and they respect each other. And this is the change of attitude that we need in our young group of folks, because their minds haven't been developed. But if they're good kids and they're hanging out with each other, less issues may happen, but they'll be in the know because there's just too much out there that they're facing with other classmates.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Paul Vecchione. The 7 signs your teenager is using drugs, and we'll make this widely available. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Great
My
job,
pleasure.
Loralyn.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Great job.